Good evening, delegates, sponsor teachers, staff, and distinguished guests. My name is Cindy Zhang, and I'm your Director General. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Secretariat, I'd like to welcome you to the 18th iteration of Canadian High School's Model United Nations. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered and where CAHSMUN is typically held is the shared traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people. Specifically, we recognize the Musqueam, Squamish, Stolo, and Tsleil-Waututh nations on whose lands we convene. Each year, CAHSMUN strives to engage youth in their community, as the first step is acknowledging past and present injustices. Reconciliation is a continual process to which we all owe responsibility. We would also like to recognize the diverse groups of people who participate in CAHSMUN and ask all delegates to review our code of conduct before participating in their committees to ensure a constructive weekend of learning for all of us. Now, let's introduce our Secretariat team. First, our USG Outreach, Stephanie Hai, USG IT, Byungjun Moon, USG Marketing, Emily Ramlochan, USG Delegate Affairs, Neil Hong, USG Specialized Agencies, William Wang, USG General Assemblies, Austin Ma, Director of Logistics, Darren Yang, Chief of Staff, Athena Law, and our Secretary General, Kobe Chen. There's another aspect of the CAHSMUN community we'd also like to thank, our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is Crimson Education, our official printing sponsor is Westwood Printing and Signs, our silver sponsors are Jinjudan Yaletown, Forum Prints, and Sticker Mule, and finally, our partners are the University of British Columbia and Coastal Rain. Our sponsors' generous support helps us create a better organization every year, and for the 18th iteration, we continue our commitment as an institution beyond just an annual event. Despite our shift to a virtual conference, we are branching our Foundations program to include year-long community activities to provide educational modules for all students. For the 18th iteration, CAHSMUN is hosting delegates from as far as Mexico and Nepal. As an institution with direct access to so many teachers, coaches, and ambitious students from diverse backgrounds, we have a responsibility to progress and expand our domain each year. Although we initially planned for an in-person conference in May 2021, we underestimated the far-reaching impacts of the pandemic. It is disheartening that we are not gathered at the Sheraton Wall Centre in Vancouver, BC. But as we pushed forward with this project, our team realized that CAHSMUN is about the impact. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is the people that we have inspired. So the speeches you present, the words you'll win or won't win, and the resolutions you pass this weekend might fade away over time, but they are all part of your journey to be the leaders of your future. For this reason, I urge you to learn today and lead tomorrow. I would now like to invite our USG Delegate Affairs, Neil Hong, to speak about the Delegate Social and CAHSMUN's social media. Godspeed.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Neil Hong, and I hold the honor of serving as the USG Delegate Affairs for CAHSMUN 2022. While the conference will be held online this year, our vision of uniting delegates in a time of global segregation has not yielded. And so I'm here to introduce our virtual delegate social, Spotlight. A night of converging opulence, Spotlight will be a Hollywood-themed celebration crowning the champions of various games such as Minecraft, Codenames, or Scriblio, exhibiting accredited movies, sharing creative talents, displaying trivia expertise, and snapshotting memories along the red carpet. Join us for a dazzling night of fun and revel in the lifelong friendships you're bound to forge. As a little bonus, we'll be giving away over $150 of prizes, so don't miss out on a chance to win some glamorous souvenirs just by having fun. Also, if you want to see highlights from the conference weekend, including delegate insights, IPC stories, conference updates, and giveaway winners, check out our Instagram and Facebook pages.
I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. David R. Boyd. Dr. Boyd was appointed as the United Nations Special Reporter on Human Rights and the Environment for a 3-year term on August 1, 2018. He is currently working as an Associate Professor of Law, Policy, and Sustainability at the University of British Columbia. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. David R. Boyd.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Boyd, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment I'm really delighted to be joining you for this Model UN event today. As you all know, I'm sure, we are living in the midst of an unprecedented global environmental crisis comprised of the climate emergency, pervasive pollution of our planet, and the collapse of biological diversity. This has been extensively chronicled in reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the Intergovernmental Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, and the World Health Organization. And what's really important to understand from my vantage point is that the global environmental crisis is also very much a human rights crisis. You know, in the past 2 years, we've seen COVID-19 turn our world upside down, causing more than 6 million deaths. And governments have responded with tens of trillions of dollars spent on vaccines, social programs, and other efforts to blunt the impact of the pandemic. And yet, over the past 2 years, you may be surprised to learn that pollution, toxic substances, and climate-related natural disasters have caused between 2 and 3 times as many premature deaths as COVID-19. And yet, governments have not responded to the global environmental crisis with trillions of dollars in spending for renewable energy or the transition to a circular economy. So scientists are saying that what we need is rapid, systemic, and transformative change to virtually every aspect of society in order to confront the global environmental crisis and ensure a sustainable future for young people like yourselves. And here's where human rights comes into the picture and provides us with some degree of inspiration and hope. If we look back over recent centuries of human history, we can see that human rights have actually been used as a catalyst for societal transformations. Take the abolition of slavery, for example, where the rights to freedom and equality were used by the abolitionists. Take the women's rights movement, resulting in emancipation, eligibility to vote, and huge progress for women over the course of the past century. The movement to end apartheid in South Africa, the civil rights movement, the indigenous people's rights movement, the movements of persons with disabilities and LGBTQ plus persons, all of these social movements have harnessed the power of human rights to bring about transformative changes. It's never simple or easy, and human rights are certainly not a silver bullet or a magic wand, but they do have this track record. And so in light of the global environmental crisis, something that's really exciting is the emergence of a new human right, the right to live in a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. This right was actually part of indigenous cultures and indigenous legal systems for thousands of years in a reciprocity between rights and responsibilities, where indigenous people held that if you took care of your territories of life, then you had the right to take what was needed for your subsistence. But in the Western world, it was actually Rachel Carson in the early 1960s in her groundbreaking book, Silent Spring, that first talked about the right to live in a healthy environment. It was mentioned ambiguously in 1972 at the first Global Earth Summit in Stockholm, Sweden. And since that time has actually found its way into constitutions, laws, and regional human rights treaties around the world. Beginning in 1976 in Portugal with constitutional recognition of the right to a healthy environment, followed by Spain in 1978, Peru in 1979, the African Charter on Peoples and Human Rights in 1981, and onwards across the decades, so that by this year, 156 of the UN's 193 member states recognize in law the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And that was capped off last October by the UN Human Rights Council, which recognized in a historic resolution at the global level for the first time that everyone, everywhere, has the right to live in a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Now, some of you may be asking, what does that mean, the right to a healthy environment? And over the decades, it's evolved to have a combination of both substantive and participatory elements. The substantive elements include clean air to breathe, safe and sufficient water, healthy and sustainably produced food, non-toxic environments where people can live, work, study, and play, healthy ecosystems and biodiversity, and of course, a safe climate. And those substantive elements come with a toolbox of participatory rights, including the right to environmental information, the right to participate in environmental decision-making, and the right of access to justice with effective remedies when your right to a healthy environment is being threatened or violated. As well, there's a number of key human rights law principles that guide the implementation of this right, including prevention, precaution, non-discrimination, and non-regression. The next question is, does this right really make a difference? And again, here is some good news. I did a study of 92 countries where the right to a healthy environment is included in the Constitution, the highest and strongest law of a country, and found that in over 80% of these countries, the right to a healthy environment resulted in the enactment of stronger environmental laws and policies, improved implementation and enforcement of these laws and policies, higher levels of public participation, and most importantly, improved environmental outcomes, such as faster reductions in air pollution, faster reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and higher levels of access to safe drinking water. So this is a human right that does make a difference in people's lives. And I could spend hours giving you examples from all over the world of how the right to a healthy environment has made a difference. Just last week, a court in South Africa, in a lawsuit that was brought by two community organizations about chronic air pollution, the court held that the government's failure to improve air quality in the Mpumalanga region of South Africa violated the constitutional right to a healthy environment and gave the government 6 months to enact regulations to improve air quality. A similar court decision from a year earlier in Indonesia, again, involving chronic air pollution in Jakarta. And in terms of climate change, we've seen a number of lawsuits brought in recent years based on human rights impacts of government's failure to address the climate crisis. A famous case in the Netherlands called the Urgenda case, where the Supreme Court of the Netherlands ordered the government to take faster action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The Neubauer case from Germany, where Germany's constitutional court ordered Germany to take more rapid and ambitious climate action. And the German government and the Dutch government in both of those cases responded within months. In the Netherlands, closing down a coal-fired power plant, putting solar panels on the roofs of schools, lowering the speed limit on highways, and other actions. In Germany, increasing their already ambitious target for emissions reduction by 2030 and bringing forward their date for becoming a zero emissions economy. And if we look at the landscape around the world, there's one country that stands head and shoulders above others in terms of its enthusiastic embrace of the right to a healthy environment, and that's Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is an extraordinary example of how transformative change is possible. In the late 1940s, the president of Costa Rica decided that it was a waste of money for that small Central American state to have an army, to spend money on military equipment and personnel. And they redirected all of that expenditure. They closed down the military and spent the money on healthcare and education. And the results have been transformative. As well, in 1993, the government added the right to a healthy and ecologically balanced environment to its constitution after pressure from the public. And that has again transformed Costa Rica's future. At the time, about 25% of Costa Rica was covered by forests, which was the result of a decades-long process of deforestation. Today, more than 50% of Costa Rica is covered by forests, in large part because of a program where the government imposed a carbon tax on the use of fossil fuels and then used the revenues to pay indigenous peoples and rural landowners to reforest their land. Costa Rica generates over 99% of its electricity from renewables, including solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal. Close to 30% of Costa Rica is in national parks. They do not allow open pit mining or offshore oil and gas exploration. They have a very ambitious plan to become the world's first carbon-free country by 2050. They have one of the highest literacy rates in the world, life expectancy that exceeds the life expectancy in the United States. And in recent decades, their economy has really transformed as well, from in the 1970s, primarily reliant on agricultural exports such as coffee and bananas, to today, where the leading exports from Costa Rica are silicon chips and prosthetic medical devices, again, reflecting a clean economy, a highly educated population. And that's just one example of many from around the world where the right to a healthy environment has really brought about major changes. France is a more recent addition to this field, adding the right to a healthy environment to its constitution in 2004. And since then, France has moved to the forefront globally in all kinds of environmental actions. The first country in the world to prohibit all uses of fracking, a destructive way to explore for oil and gas. First country in the world to prohibit the export of pesticides that are not permitted for use within its borders. And so we are at a point in human history where we need to make these rapid, systemic, and transformative changes. And I believe that taking a human rights-based approach to the climate crisis, to pervasive pollution, and to the loss of biodiversity is our very best way of achieving the types of effective and equitable changes that we need to bring about a cleaner, greener, sustainable future. We have the technology, we have the laws and policies that we need. It's simply a matter of political will. We need to move away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy as quickly as humanly possible. We need to move away from the linear economy where we treat nature as just a warehouse of natural resources. We manufacture things and then we put our garbage and our waste back into the natural world. We need to shift to a circular economy, which is something that the natural world has been doing for literally billions of years. And we have an opportunity to pilot that process as negotiations begin on a new global treaty for plastics, a decision which was just recently made. So there are reasons for hope. There are reasons to be inspired. And I hope to work with all of you in the years ahead in achieving everyone's right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Thank you very much and enjoy this beautiful blue-green planet that we're also fortunate to share.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd, for that inspiring speech. Next, I would like to invite Neil Hong, USG Delegate Affairs, to highlight some important logistical information for CAHSMUN 2022.
Thank you, Cindy. I would like to take this opportunity to go over critical information surrounding conference logistics and important reminders. This year, CAHSMUN will be hosted on CAHSMUN Campus, a conference webpage made by our USG IT that will help you navigate the conference during the weekend. To access your committee, please enter CAHSMUN Campus, find your committee name, and click on it to access your committee room. Each committee room, with the exception of the Secretariat Desk and Delegate Social, will be given a unique password that should have been sent to you via email prior to the conference. We ask that you do not share your committee's password with anyone and that you write this password down so you do not forget it. As committee sessions will be held on Zoom, we ask that you join your committee room 5 minutes before the beginning of each session. However, in between breaks, we ask that you do not leave the committee room to allow for a smooth transition after the break. Should you have any questions during the conference, feel free to join the Secretariat Desk Room, where a member of the Secretariat team will be available to answer any of your questions. For all urgent inquiries regarding technological issues, please call our toll-free number that will be listed on CAHSMUN Campus. Finally, please join our conference Slack workspace before the first committee session if you have not done so already. The instructions and the invitation have already been sent to your email prior to the conference. As Slack will be used by the Secretariat to convey all pertinent information and announcements, please ensure that you are checking it regularly throughout the conference. Thank you for taking the time to attend CAHSMUN. Godspeed.
Thank you, Neil, for the important information. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, I'd like to invite our Secretary General, Kobe Chen, to deliver his speech.
Good afternoon, sponsor teachers, delegates, and special guests. My name is Kobe Chen, and I'm distinctly honored to be serving as the Secretary General of Canadian High Schools Model United Nations 2022. On behalf of the Secretariat team and our Board of Directors, I'd like to extend an ecstatic welcome to our 18th iteration of CAHSMUN. Some of you may recall a not-so-distant past, where eager delegates, staff, and sponsor teachers seeped into the grand ballroom of the Sheraton Wall Centre. All convened, we would sit side by side, ready to start a weekend of electric debate and discussion, teeming with excitement. While we may not be sitting side by side right now, I sincerely hope that the same feeling is present in all of you. The jitter in your heart, the butterflies in your stomach, the anticipation of what is to come. Hold on to this feeling. Since last August, the Secretariat team and I have been working to replicate the same experience we've cherished for so many years on a virtual platform. The pandemic has been extremely unpredictable, and difficult choices were made without knowing what we'd be facing up ahead. However, despite all the ups and downs of adapting to COVID, what kept the Secretariat team going was the prospect of committees coming to life year after year. Seeing all of your hands in the air, being privy to inside jokes, and witnessing hundreds of delegates assembled to debate, discuss, and discover. Albeit, we're watching through Zoom screens, we wouldn't have traded this experience for anything. To the first-timers, thank you for jumping in headfirst into this eccentric extracurricular activity. On the surface, you might have expected MUN to be something different. Maybe you have no idea what it's like at all. Though, I'm confident that this weekend will reframe your expectations of what it means to be a diplomat. To you, I ask that you just take as many risks as possible. Model UN is daunting at first, from specific rules of procedure to the frightening prospect of speaking in front of your peers. But with every speech you give and every resolution paper you pass, it will get infinitely easier. As soon as you get your toes wet and learn to tread, you'll glide through this weekend with poise. Remember, all it takes is unmuting yourself and giving that first speech. That's what changes everything. And to the experienced delegates, whether you've been to 3 conferences or 13, welcome home. I know that this is where you feel the most comfortable, the most confident, the most curious. It certainly is for me. I know that being online might be foreign territory for some veterans, or perhaps it's something you're completely used to by now. But my ask to you is to keep growing as you've always been. Keep delivering speeches with eloquence and wit. Keep reaching out to new friends and forging bonds with old ones. Keep falling in love with the intricacies of discussion topics, from economic crises to historical controversies. Whether you're representing Angola in WHO or Galahad in FCC, you belong here. I know what you feel right now. I've sat through many speeches like this one, from Audria's to Emily's, and I know what it feels like to listen so restlessly. Just bang the gavel already and start the conference, I know. But I urge you to take in one thing, because we all hope to convey the same message at the end of the day. This weekend, take the road less traveled. Veer off your committee's path and pave your own. Make the speech that changes the course of debate. Write the resolution clause that will change the world's approach to whatever issue is at hand. Like my predecessor has said, seeking to follow in someone's footsteps may lead you in the right direction, but aim to leave your own mark in your journey through Model UN. In other words, learn today so that you may lead tomorrow. This is a weekend that you'll cherish for years to come. And now, as tradition goes, I pronounce CAHSMUN 2022 now in session. Godspeed.